UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co.
This episode raising significant constitutional issues.
Indeed, the fallout from the Afghan cover-up in full flow. People demanding answers, accountability and reassurances. Will we ever get those things, though? Because, of course, the biggest question of all still remains, what else is our government hiding from us? And a Labour purge MP sacked and suspended as Keir Starmer desperately seeks to get control of his party. Do you think it'll work? And the review of the Prevent scheme has concluded, and it recommends a large expansion to include those people who have a fixation with violence but no ideology. Do you think that would be the answer then to try and stop creatures like Axel Rudakabana? And Sandy Peggy, does that name mean anything to you? It will, because it'll go down in history as she fought for the simplest of women's rights, not to have to get undressed in front of men against our will. And today, she was cleared. Good. Keeping me company tonight as we go through that and much more. I've got Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer, and Bill Rammell, the former Labour minister. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines. Michelle, thank you. The top stories. Donald Trump addressed the Jeffrey Epstein files whilst meeting with the Crown Prince of Bahrain at the White House. The US president said people who believe the files are stupid, adding the credible files should be released. The president also denied that he plans to fire Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, contradicting a senior White House official. He also said he was, quote, pretty good. He was going to announce some pretty good trade deals, including maybe with China. Sir Keir Starmer has suspended 4 Labour MPs over breaching party discipline. Rachel Maskell, Neil Duncan-Jordan, Brian Leishman and Chris Hinchcliffe have had the party whip removed, meaning the MPs will sit as independents in the House of Commons. Senior Labour sources have not ruled out further MPs, including from earlier parliamentary intakes, being suspended later today. The move comes after 47 Labour MPs rebelled against the government's proposed cuts to welfare and forced ministers to water down their plans. Meanwhile, the final Prime Minister's questions before summer recess saw sharp clashes this afternoon, with Kemi Badenoch accusing Sir Keir Starmer of failing to define working people.
I asked him what a modest income was. He answered what a working person is. He doesn't know what a modest income is, and even on working people, they cannot define it.
The Prime Minister hit back, saying after 14 years of Conservative government, they don't get to lecture anyone.
Since we've been in government, we've created 380,000 jobs, the employment rate is up and inactivity is down, the complete opposite of what we inherited.
Sir Keir Starmer says former Tory ministers have serious questions to answer about how the names of Afghans who worked with UK forces were exposed. Thousands of Afghan nationals are being relocated to the UK after their names were accidentally sent in an email in February of 2022, but the leak was only discovered by the British military in August of 2023. A super injunction preventing the reporting of that mistake was imposed that year in an attempt to prevent the Taliban from finding out about the leak. The injunction was lifted yesterday. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says this should never happen again.
When this data was leaked, which was a terrible error on the part of the Ministry of Defence and should never, ever happen again. It's extraordinary it happened in the first place. But it did place at risk tens of thousands of Afghans who had, in many cases, bravely assisted us.
In other news, the Prevent scheme must rapidly adapt to online radicalisation, a major review has warned today. It follows terror attacks by Axel Ruda-Cabana and Sir David Amos's killer, both previously referred to the scheme. New Commissioner Lord Anderson has made 10 recommendations to overhaul Prevent's approach, including better tracking of violent ideologies and online behaviour. Inflation has unexpectedly jumped to 3.6%, the highest level in 18 months. Food prices have now surged for the third month in a row, with airfares seeing their biggest monthly hike in 7 years. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says working people are still struggling and insists there's more to do to bring prices down. The Bank of England is still expected to cut interest rates in August. The High Court has ruled in favour of Lindsay Smith in her case against Northumbria Police. Smith launched a case against the force after claiming their uniformed participation in a Pride march last year broke the professional oath sworn by each police officer to act with impartiality at work. In a landmark High Court ruling today, a judge found that there would have been issues in policing with impartiality if, for example, an attempted counter-demonstration by gender-critical people had broken out. And a nurse suspended after complaining about sharing a changing room with a transgender colleague has been cleared of gross misconduct. Sandy Peggy was accused of misgendering Dr Beth Upton and of patient care failings, but a disciplinary panel found no evidence to support those claims. The decision came hours before her employment tribunal, where she's alleging harassment and victimisation. NHS 5 says no sanctions will be imposed, but the case has already cost the Health Board more than £200,000. The tribunal follows a Supreme Court ruling defining sex in law as biological. And those are the latest headlines for now. More news in an hour. It is over to Dewbs & Co.
For the very latest, GB News direct to your smartphone. Sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Tatiana. I love that last story about Sandy Peggy. Of course, I will get into that story before the end of the programme, and it won't come of any surprise to regular viewers to know that I'm delighted by that outcome. I'm absolutely sick to death, quite frankly, of men trying to muscle their way in to women's changing rooms. Get out. That's what I say, so I'm delighted by the outcome. But, of course, we will get into that. Before the end of the programme, worry not, alongside me, I've got my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer and former MEP, and Bill Rammell, the former Labour Minister. Good evening to both of you. You're very welcome tonight. Best dressed person on television, best dressed woman. That's what I always say to Jacqueline. She's always so smart. She puts me to shame. I always think, I look at you and I think I must coordinate myself a little bit better. Today I've managed to coordinate with the chair, and that's about it. I must try harder. But anyway, look, you guys join the conversation in all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me, worry not. We shall come on to the monumental fallout based on that Afghan secrecy. But before I do that, I can't help but notice Keir Starmer seems to be flexing his muscles, trying to get a hold of his party. Let's cross live to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, bring us up to speed with what has been quite an eventful late afternoon.
Yes, it has, Michelle, indeed. Well, you remember just a couple of weeks ago, there was a huge rebellion over welfare reforms. The government wanted to take £5 billion a year off the bill. And even with a majority of 161 Labour MPs, dozens of them were having none of it. So there were about 47 rebelled in the end. And, Rachel Reeves has now got to find that money from somewhere. Cue likely tax rises in the autumn. So this is about sending a message. So this afternoon, 4 Labour MPs were summoned to the Chief Whip and they have had the whip suspended. That means they will sit as independents. 3 of those MPs only came in the general election last year, but one of them, Rachel Maskell, came in back in 2015. She's been a big figure in the Labour Party. She's had lots of shadow ministerial roles in the past. And she, along with all of them, have basically said that they are standing up for their constituents. Neil Duncan Jordan said that he couldn't support making disabled people poorer. Chris Hinchcliffe led a rebellion on planning. But let's have a look at what Rachel Maskell had to say about the fact she's lost the whip a little bit earlier.
See myself as a rebel, but somebody that is prepared to fulfil my role here of holding the executive to account and speaking truth to power. And I'm somebody that is a bridge builder in life and really reaches in to a situation, and I hold my hand out to the Prime Minister and hope he takes that and wants to reach back, because I think it's really important that we work together. That's where the Labour Party came from. But, you know, obviously choices have been made today. I'm not going to...
So Rachel Maskell saying she didn't see herself as a rebel, but it was she that led the final welfare rebellion that saw the bill basically being gutted just before the vote, a quite preposterous situation. So the government sending a message before recess saying, look, we are in charge. Actually, there may be consequences if you decide to go and do your own thing. I think an attempt to try to get Labour MPs back into line. Of course, you could say that a little bit late for that. Somebody said the Times, who broke this story, that they were being suspended for, quote, persistent knob headery. That's a phrase for the ages, isn't it? Worth saying too that there were 3 other people that had trade envoy roles that have been taken away as well, though they have still kept the whip. So will it help the Prime Minister and his authority when Labour MPs come back in September? We shall see.
Interesting stuff. Thank you very much for that, Catherine Forster. We shall watch with interest to see whether or not anything actually changes as a result. And by the way, that quotation that she gave there, it was a direct quotation from Labour insiders as to what they were suggesting was perhaps one of the reasons behind some of this stuff. Will this make a blind bit of difference, Bill Rammell?
Well, I mean, firstly, with regard to Rachel Maskell saying she's not a rebel, she wrote an article in the New Statesman last week, and the headline was How to Organise a Rebellion. So, you know, it's a bit rich to say that she's not a rebel. However, I'm not convinced by this strategy.
But by the way, some people, sorry, just cut in, but often people are not responsible for the headlines of the articles that they write.
No, but the substance of the article, she was celebrating the fact that she'd organised the rebellion. But I'm not convinced by this approach. Actually, Keir, in his management of party discipline, makes Tony Blair look like a bit of a lily-livered liberal. And the problem is you do have to take people with you. And look, I was very angry and frustrated by the rebellion over welfare reform. I think too many Labour MPs got it wrong. But what the Prime Minister needs to do and what the Cabinet need to do is to persuade them that that the changes are the right way forward, that we can't go on with welfare unreformed, and that we need to implement those changes. But I think that's about hearts and minds. I frankly think Keir needs to spend a bit more time in the House of Commons, a bit more time in the tea room, talking to, persuading and engaging MPs. Of course, there ultimately comes a point where if someone is consistently rebelling over a number of years, you need to do something about it. But I'm not convinced we've reached that stage here.
Jacqueline?
I think it was inevitable. I think I said a few months ago, you know, give them a year. When you've got a large majority like this, then you get the tall poppies start to sort of come to the fore. They're the ones that think they should be Prime Minister now. As you've mentioned, a lot of new members of Parliament, you know, they were elected 12 months ago and they came in with an absolute bang to constituents writing in about the freebies that Keir Starmer and others had had from Lord Alley. Then they had the most horrendous budget with the rise in national insurance contributions, removed the winter fuel allowance. So, of course, it was affecting all the pensioners in the constituencies and all the small and sized businesses. So, you know, I think they've been under a relentless probably bombardment, a lot of these constituency MPs over these last months. And then, of course, you've got the ones who were already in Parliament before the last election and they weren't given a job. So they're feeling pretty, you know, pretty grim about it all. And as I said, you know, you've got those who think they should be Prime Minister now and there's no chance of them being promoted. So what they're doing now is, you know, the fact that there's 4 already lost the whip, I mean, you know, and it's fairly early days. I think you're going to see an awful lot more of this. And the rebellion, I mean, the fact he allowed that rebellion in a way and handled it so badly over the welfare reforms was actually, I mean, it was like a group of amateurs, frankly.
Well, one Labour aide has apparently said it's not just as straightforward as things like, you know, welfare, rebellion and all the rest of it. They're suggesting that actually it's to do with criticism about the approach towards Gaza. Do you think there's any truth in that, Bill Rammel? What they're saying, and I quote, all the MPs they've taken action against have been strong and vocal critics of the handling of the Gaza conflict.
I don't know if that is the case.
Well, she spoke out about it.
Yeah, no, she did. If it is, then I regret that. I mean, you know, I support the State of Israel. I supported its right to self-defence. But I think the response from the Israeli government since October the 7th, 2 years ago, has been disproportionate, and there are real concerns about what's happening in Gaza. And I think Labour MPs of all parties need to be able to express that concern.
Jackie?
Well, I was in a meeting this afternoon with two of the hostages that were released. There was the American chap, American-Israeli, after 474 days. And it was President Trump and Netanyahu who got him released. His wife was released, I think, after a couple of months. And to just listen to what happened to them is just horrendous. There is no excuse for this. People can have views about Gaza and everything else. At the end of the day, they're also elected to represent their constituents, and they're, you know, they're expected to at least take responsibility for what they're doing. But I think it's Rachel Maskell. I mean, she's all over, you know, social media saying, you know, welcome everybody in and we must not stop anybody coming in. So they're not boding with really what the government policy, I think, is trying to produce on some of these things, although it's failing miserably.
What do you all make to that at home? Do you think actually this will make a blind bit of difference when it comes to the Labour Party and how they operate going forward? Should it? Get in touch, give me your thoughts. But, of course, the big one after the break, this whole farce when it comes to Afghan cover-ups. The million-dollar question, ladies and gents, is what on earth else is this government hiding from us?
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, how about meeting the new ABBA? It's what a lot of people are calling Dad Harmony. It's a new Swedish a cappella group that are the biggest TikTok sensation you can imagine. They are everywhere at the moment, and they join us now. Really good to see you all. With us, we have this morning Thomas, Michael, Sebastian, Peter and Adam. Not necessarily in that order, but I know. There we go. Gents, it's really good to see you. I've got to ask, first and foremost, how did you get started? How do you even get together and think, this is something we can do?
Yeah, it's actually all of a coincidence, to be honest. It was, we were friends, but we were Peter had a bachelor party. And like 10 p.m. or something, we started to sing. And I recorded that song. And for some reason, I put it out on my TikTok account with like 7 followers or something. And then it blew up and got like, the first video got 22 million views, I think.
Beautiful.
Just
really
gorgeous.
beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs and Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Bill Rammell. One of my viewers, Elle, you've been in touch and said, Michelle, don't be surprised if there will be a plot taking place during summer recess to try and oust Starmer, probably by the backbench and even one or two of the front benchers. Would you agree with that? And if you would agree with that and if you would celebrate that, who on earth would you have then as the new leader of the Labour Party? I'd be fascinated to know your thoughts on that one. Let's, of course, talk about the big story on the lips of many, the absolute farce that was the Afghan data leak. I mean, honestly, ladies and gents, this will turn out to be one of the biggest scandals in British political history. It's an absolute mess. You know the story already by now about this data breach that was then put onto Facebook that ended up with an injunction, expanded into a super injunction. And here we are. The numbers tend to vary depending on which reports and which people you listen to about exactly how many people have come in and what the overall sum of money is. But it's absolutely eye-watering. Let's listen to Keir Starmer today at PMQ's referencing this.
We warned in opposition about Conservative management of this policy, and yesterday the Defence Secretary set out the full extent of the failings that we inherited. A major data breach, a super injunction, a secret route that has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Ministers who served under the party opposite have serious questions to answer about how this was ever allowed to happen.
Well, indeed, the million-dollar question that many people have got on their lips. I've been looking at all your viewer contact today. So many of you are asking, what on earth, what other things are our government not telling us, these notions of super injunctions? What is going on behind closed doors that is deliberately being kept back from us? Bill Rammell, what's your view on this? Some people saying that these super injunctions should never be allowed.
Well, it depends on the circumstances, but in terms of are there other super injunctions in place, I thought John Healey, the Defence Secretary, answered that on TV this morning, where he said no, not as far as he's aware, because you know he can't answer. Yeah,
but I thought you wasn't even allowed. The very notion of a super injunction was the fact that you're not even allowed to allude to the existence of the super injunction.
But he didn't say that. He said no, not as far as he was aware. So I don't think there are any other super injunctions out there. But look,
I don't believe that, I'm afraid. And I think many of my viewers won't believe that either. And because what this episode has done, it's damaged, more deeply damaged, trust in the political class. Most people don't have much trust in the political class anyway, Bill. This just reinforces that to them.
And look, I think the Tories have got some serious questions to answer about what they did in government in handling this issue. But look, let me declare an interest. I was a Foreign Office Minister for 4 years. I went to Afghanistan 5 times. I know firsthand how many Afghans worked with us to protect British troops and to protect our security. And this is a scandal. You know, a data breach, 19,000 Afghans had their security put at risk. 7,000 in a secret scheme under the last government came to this country, and it's cost hundreds of millions of pounds. There's all sorts of questions that spring out of this, and I think there needs to be a serious inquiry. I know the Defence Select Committee is going to be inquiring. I personally think it should be the Defence and Intelligence and Security Committee, which is the highest ranking committee that really needs to get its teeth into this, to ask what happened, why did it happen, were the actions proportionate, was the last government justified in doing this?
You sound like Ed Davey. Take a listen to what he was calling for.
I've ever had.
No, you do. Listen. Listen to him.
Associate myself with the Prime Minister's words about the shocking Afghan data breach under the previous government kept secret for 3 years, and he will have our support if he decides to pursue a public inquiry.
The same page, pushing and wanting inquiries, public inquiries. Is that what we need?
I think a public inquiry takes too long. It takes 3-4 years. The Intelligence and Security Committee can to get to grips with this immediately. And people like Ben Wallace and Grant Shapps, who were the Defence Secretaries...
Where is the latter? I cannot help but notice we haven't heard from Grant Shapps because Ben Wallace, you'll all be familiar with this perhaps, so Ben Wallace was the Defence Minister at the start of this. He put the injunction in initially for a 4-month period. It was Grant Shapps, actually, that was in post when these things got extended. The secret scheme was then launched. Where is he? I've not seen him comment upon this.
And normally Grant Shapps is very loud and vocal
he is.
out there. And it's interesting, I just read a report half an hour ago, Jacob Rees-Mogg has started demanding questions of Grant Shapps of how he handled these issues.
Jacqueline, your thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to put a bit of context on it because we were in Afghanistan for 20 years and the people who were applying to come here were not asylum seekers. They weren't people coming on boats. There were apparently genuine people who had worked very closely with the armed forces and people who we trained, not just interpreters. So you're talking over that period quite a substantial number of people. And I don't think the British public opposed, obviously, allowing them to get out of there once the Taliban took over. Now, where the big concern is the leak. And this isn't the first leak by the MOD, and it won't be the last probably, but it should be. And we've had leaks like this from the Home Office. And we have had people who work in these departments, they're leaving laptops on trains. We found information in bins over the years because we do hear about it. And then this last one. And then you look in and you say, what's the software like? Where are the safeguards for somebody to actually do something like that? So I think that's the first thing, obviously, they were looking at. In terms of then once they found out that there was a leak, and it obviously affected directly, I think. There were originally 18,000 or something on this list. That doesn't mean all of those that were actually coming. But I understand there's several hundred who are key and they're trying to contact 800 people and they have families. And then the concern was clearly that this information ended up in the public domain. And that happened, and this is where the injunctions had to come in because you had to keep that information outside of the public because obviously this is lives at risk. So I completely agree with the steps, the legal steps, and that was also looked at again by the appeal courts before recently to say it was still valid. And in addition, actually, the shadow Labour defence ministers were informed 18 months ago, so the opposition were informed on this.
The injunction.
So I'm not trying to gloss over this, but I'm just trying to look and put this story into place. Ben Wallace rightly has done a full apology. He was the Secretary of State at the time. These sorts of things cannot be allowed to happen. As I said, from my point of view, with regards to the injunction at the time, I think that was correct. We have had reassurance. We had the debate in the House of Lords today. We've had the reassurance that all of those that did come in under these schemes have been fully security checked.
Oh, come off it, Jacqueline. I'm listening nice and politely.
I am just reporting what was said today.
No
those who are allowed to come in through the schemes, the legitimate schemes, were fully security checked. It wasn't like the sort of mad system that goes on in the Home Office at times where somebody, I think, sends somebody an email. Because obviously we've been asking the questions. Now, our questions are not finite and we still want more answers on this. And this is our side of the House as well. We were in government, we fully accept that. But in terms of, as you quite rightly say, some of the misinformation that's coming out or the exaggeration of this is coming out, that actually isn't very helpful. So we will continue this challenge. There does need to be an inquiry, Bill. I think I completely agree with you. And we need to get to the bottom of this. And we need to make sure that people who we are paying to work in these areas that have, you know, official secrets and everything else are actually doing the job. They're doing the job that they are paid to do.
I just want to make, before you come back in, I just want to push back on some of the stuff you're saying. It's all very fascinating context, but this entire thing stinks. One of the reasons, one of the suggestions when you're extending all of these injunctions and stuff, one of the reasons given was to protect political and reputational risk, because they knew, this government knew, that if all of this got out, what would happen, the blowback on the government would be absolutely catastrophic. One of the data processors on the Arab, so the more legitimate scheme, he has raised concerns and said this ARR scheme, this new, it's like this is the scheme that they then set up because of this mess.
There's another scheme.
Yeah. He said that people there did not pass for security concerns. And these lists, there were multiple different lists. Not all of those people on these lists were those people that helped support British troops. There were all kinds of people on these lists. There were also people on this list that had previously applied for asylum and had those claims rejected. I even think that one of the people that were threatening to expose this data and share this data with the likes of the Taliban, there's even been suggestions that he was someone who had his asylum claim rejected, but apparently now him and multiple relatives are now in the UK. So there is so many concerning bits of information that come out of this. So many people are concerned off the back of this. It is simply appalling.
Oh, I don't disagree. And Ben Wallace said when they had the list and these people had applied to come, that there were a number, there were many that actually would never have been eligible and they were never allowed to come. But as you've said, quite rightly, obviously there's some people somewhere who've slipped through the net somehow.
But there's a danger applied, because this is not like... you know, if someone's applied for asylum, they've been rejected, if there's people that are suspected or known to have committed sexual offences, violent offences, I get worried, particularly as a woman now, I get worried that this kind of like this nonchalant kind of view, oh, yeah, some people might have slipped through the net and all the rest of it. I cannot fathom, and nor am I comfortable with the fact that not a single person has lost their job over this. Well, not a single person.
I couldn't agree with you more, because we've had the same thing on the grooming gangs. We've had the same. We're having a big inquiry now. Eventually, you know, we're having things that happen, and they've happened over the years. It's not just recently, and then things have been covered up, and then what we do, then we're trying to find out how to get to the bottom of it, and then you've got all of these people who've been put in the most terrible position.
But you know, that's why we need a really searching inquiry. And look,
I've just said that.
This has just come out, and we're all reading all sorts of stuff. To describe this
it's come out to us, but this was known.
No, I know.
This was known among the circles.
But I'm talking about our understanding of it. And to describe this as a data breach, I'm not sure that's accurate, because my understanding from reading the reports today...
The government's... The ministers are saying it is.
What the MOD and what the Special Forces were doing was checking with Afghan contacts in Afghanistan the veracity of the claims for asylum. Well, I think a really big question is that a sensible thing to do, and is it too risky? And I hope the inquiry gets to the bottom of that. But on the substance of
Ben Wallace addressed this very point, actually. I think it was him. Yeah, it was him. Ben Wallace addressed this point earlier on in an interview. What he was saying is, and you will know this better than anyone here, that actually it was such a chaotic experience. There's not, you know, embassies and all the rest of it where you can just call up and go, oh, check this person, check that person. It's all done with, you know, your sources and all the rest of it. Can you have a little word with that guy who knows that guy who knows that guy? They were doing that. That was their system in an absolute chaotic mess created, by the way, by us and America over there. But anyway, that's
it was the American withdrawal exacerbated all of this, because it wasn't planned at that time. And we've been very critical over, so have Republicans.
And look, I personally think the withdrawal from Afghanistan was atrocious, and Trump started it and Biden carried it forward.
All I'm saying, and it's not to make an excuse, but then the rapidity of that withdrawal then, I think, exacerbated, what the problem was.
But Jacqueline, what's really
anyway,
animating
I think
people
we need an inquiry and we need to get to the bottom of it.
This was secret for 2 years, and this government has actually, and John Healey has moved significantly so that this has been opened up. Hold on.
No, it's just what the judge had said on this.
But one of the questions for me, and my last job in government was Minister of State for the Armed Forces, and I think, sadly, the default position of the Ministry of Defence too often is secrecy and holding things close. And I think one of the really challenging questions is, to what extent was Ben Wallace properly advised by the MOD to actually go down this path of the super injunction?
Yeah, but Ben Wallace, if Ben Wallace was sitting here now, he would say it wasn't him. He didn't apply for a super injunction. He applied for a standard 4-month injunction to try and just get his head around everything. It was Grant Shapps. It was under his watch that this super injunction... And it's him. Grant Shapps needs to get out and explain himself.
No, he does, and he's going to have to do that with the inquiry.
He'll have to do that with an inquiry, I think.
And Kemi Badenoch, by the way, she didn't come off this scot-free either. She was apparently offered a briefing on this in March, and she refused that briefing. Apparently she didn't realise how important it potentially it was. But I'll tell you what you're all sick of, because I speak to you every single day and I feel your pain, don't worry. The fact that yet again, this entire mess, there will be no accountability. You can have all your investigations you want. No one will get fired. No one will have the decency to resign. I'll tell you what will happen. Yet more squeezes will be put onto us, taxpayers. We will be pushed to fund all of this ridiculousness. We will be pushed to create all of these cuts, whether it's in welfare or whatever it is, to bail out all of this absolute, utter incompetence, ladies and gents. I just dread to think what else is going on, because I don't believe for a second that there are no more super injunctions, and I don't believe for a second that there are not other things that have been deliberately kept from us. Maybe I'm being harsh. What do you think? Get in touch, join the conversation in all the usual ways. After the break, the Prevent report that has concluded, and it has a suggestion to create a new expansion to capture people that are obsessed with violence but don't fit in the box of an ideology. Would you support that? See you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Lots of hot, strong sunshine around the Mediterranean at the moment. A few showers are possible in Sicily and inland over Turkey. We may just see 1 or 2 showers. Most of the coast here dry and sunny. Much of the Greek islands also dry, fine and sunny. 1 or 2 showers through the spine of Italy, but again, the coast's dry and fine. Northern parts of Spain may see a bit more cloud and a few showers. Quite a brisk wind blowing over the Canaries, but it's going to be hot in Tenerife. Temperatures just dipping a little bit here into the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow, we're going to see some wet weather pushing across western parts, and here there is the risk of some thunder. We've already had quite a bit of cloud and rain across the southwest today. That's because of a weather system that's pushing its way in, and it's going to continue to make its way northeastwards as we go through the next 24 hours. As a result, some hefty rain pushing across parts of Wales overnight, and some outbreaks of heavy, possibly thundery rain feeding in across Northern Ireland too. Further east, it's dry with clear skies, a few fog patches possible for some eastern parts of England, but for all, it is going to be a relatively warm night. Pretty warm indeed, actually, across the west. Most places seeing temperatures staying well in double figures. As we go through tomorrow morning then, a west-east split across many parts of England and Wales. Brighter, sunnier towards the east, more cloud, some wet weather towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, a fairly cloudy start, and there could be some heavy bursts of rain around. Similar across the southwest of Scotland, but elsewhere across much of Scotland, it's a fine, sunny morning, albeit there will be a bit of low cloud affecting parts of Orkney and Shetland. Then as we go through the day, the cloud and outbreaks of rain feed a little bit further eastwards, but nonetheless, some eastern parts staying dry through much of the day and just turning a bit cloudier as we go into the afternoon. The heaviest rain will be towards the western parts of Northern Ireland. Risk of some intense thunderstorms here. Temperatures for all likely to be a degree or so higher than today, which means we could be looking at highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius in the southeast. Then looking ahead to Friday, and there will be some further showery rain on offer, most of it towards the northwest, but a few outbreaks will feed further south and east, although some southeastern parts probably avoiding all of it and staying dry with some decent bright sunny weather, and temperatures even higher still. We could be looking in the low 30s. Fresher and wetter as we go through the weekend.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. Motorists are advised that the A76 is closed between Crossroads and Crosshands due to a collision. In Staffordshire, the A50 eastbound is congested between the A522 and the A518 junction with delays of about 10 minutes. On Norfolk roads, a collision on the A47 westbound between the A149 and the A1064 has resulted in lane closures. Kent reports congestion on the A21 southbound between the A228 and the A262 with delays of 10 minutes. And on the trains, cross-country faces disruption at Peterborough, affecting services. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Bill Rammell. Lots of you getting in touch on that topic about Afghanistan. Lots of you are saying... I mean, I've got to say, you're quite divided on this. Lots of you are saying that we absolutely should accommodate these Afghans that have supported British troops. The other side of the fence is Michelle. These people knew the risk that they were getting into. Perhaps it's likely that these people were paid for the jobs that they did. Why have we then got an ongoing responsibility to provide sanctuary and all the rest of it ongoing for these people? But I mean, at the end of the day, if you had this, if you were helping a different country and then your family, you and your family were then put at risk by a bumbling government, you would expect to be brought to safety, would you not? One of my other viewers, Gary, says, Michelle, Keir Starmer is very keen on one in, one out, so fine. If we're going to take thousands and thousands of people in, are we then going to be passing thousands and thousands of people out? I think we all know, Gary, the short answer to that is no. Anyway, look, let's talk then, shall we, about the Prevent scheme. We know that it's come under so much scrutiny recently. There's been a review taking place which has now concluded, and one of the key recommendations from this review is essentially there needs to be an expansion and a new kind of programme put in place to catch people that are extremists but don't necessarily tick a box of a particular ideology. Is that what you think we need in this country, Bill Rammell?
No, I'm not 100% persuaded by this. I mean, certainly that category of people who, you know, are these violent, evil young men who sit in their bedrooms researching more and more violent means and eventually, like Ruda Cabana, actually carry out atrocious attacks. We need something to tackle them. The bit that I'm not convinced about is that it should be a kind of secondary process separate from Prevent. I actually think you just need to expand the criteria of Prevent so that it can be dealt with across the board, because otherwise you're going to have a second string, under-resourced programme that won't really get to grips with these issues.
Yeah, and I do worry about this because, of course, I don't even like spitting that guy's name out of my mouth, that Axel fellow. I don't like it. I think it's so disrespectful to the children, but that man, that creature, he was under the guise, if you like, of this scheme already. He was supposed to have been getting a mentor, or what I mean, a mentor is laughable, isn't it? But he was supposed to be under that umbrella, and he was failed, or I would say the victims actually were failed, not him. Anyway, do you think this is the answer, Jacqueline?
I think the Prevent programme's appalling, frankly. I think there's been far too many mistakes. It wasn't just this one where he'd been referred 3 times. I mean, this particular individual, and I won't mention his name, I mean, was dragged out of a taxi by his father with a machete or something when he was on the way to school as well. I know. Then you got the killer of David Amess, the Member of Parliament. He'd been under the Prevent programme. I mean, then you had the ones that were on, I think it was Westminster Bridge, or one of them, where the 2 quite young people who were at a big function that day, the guy with, it wasn't a machete, it was like a sort of spear-type horn thing. Yeah, it was. They were massacred. He'd been in a Prevent programme, and I heard a very interesting interview, actually, with a woman who'd worked in the Prevent programme, an employee. And so they sort of asked about, you know, what it was like. She's been there for quite some time. And she said the problem that they've got in, most of the vast majority of threats to this country are Islamic extremism. You've only got to look at the number of events out of the last 23. Probably 19 of them would have that link to it. And then, obviously, you've got some who are far right, which we're not sure what that's supposed to be sometime. But then, of course, the big concern is the lone wolves. So, you know, this isn't easy. But the trouble is, this is recurring. And she said they're that busy in this Prevent programme trying to move away from the major threat, the Islamic extremism here, to find all sorts of reasons why you're focusing on this far right, and God knows we don't even know who these people are. She said it's ridiculous. And so I think it's lost focus. I think the people have lost trust in this. I think it needs to be really re-looked at, and I think they really need to focus on what they're doing. To introduce another group of people who are violent, to me, sort of detracts away from what the Prevent programme was set up about or for. So I'm not sure that that's going to make anything any better. But as I said, it's not... Yeah, I'm sure they've had some successes somewhere, but I'm yet to see them. And we know that people, you know, they go through programmes, they lie. Then they get let off and they get let them out. They let them out of prison. They do all sorts. People lie, you know, that, oh, they've all been, you know, changed. They're changed people. Next thing they go off and, you know, and they're stabbing somebody else. So there really doesn't... I think we just need to now relook at this organisation and see what its real focus is and the people who are there, and let's look at the real threat to the people in this country.
Yeah, but look, you're kind of, Jacqueline, you're dismissing far-right extremism. Joe Cox was murdered.
I'm not
Joe Cox was murdered by a far-right extremist
by
a few years ago.
Lone wolf.
Yeah, absolutely.
Extreme man.
And he would have been dealt with exactly the same as Rudy Cabana here. And that's the problem. Technically, Rudy Cabana was not eligible for treatment under the PREVENT programme because he didn't have a terrorist ideology behind what he was trying to do. And that's what needs to change. But the bit I'm not convinced about is why you have a secondary category of programme which will probably be less priority, less resourced. We just need to expand the criteria of those people who can actually be dealt with by PREVENT, and that would have included Rudy Cabana, and it would have included the far-right extremists who killed Joe Cox.
But the PREVENT programme, they had the opportunity to stop people like the Southport killer. They had the opportunity to stop David Amos's killer. They had the opportunity to do it, and they failed because they were talked out. These people are very smart. They say they've changed their ways and all of these sorts of things, and the next thing they're out on the streets, and this is what happened in these cases.
One of the things when I have these conversations and I listen and all the rest of it, the word that keeps popping into my brain is accountability. Where is all the accountability? Because I've lost count of the amount of times that people fail. This one slipped through the net, that one slipped through the net, or this guy got murdered, these kids got murdered. Where are the accountability in all of this? Where are the strings of people that have lost their jobs, that are now on the dole queue and all the rest of it, unable to work again because they are so incompetent at their basic job that they had to do? I never seem to see that. Do you? Look, counter-terrorism policing at PREVENT said we will now carefully reflect on the report and its recommendations and continue to work alongside the government, security services, wider policing and other partners to ensure that systems designed to keep the public safe from harm do exactly that. Coming up after the break, ladies and gents, the name Sandy Peggy, does that mean anything to you? It should do. If you ask me, this lady's going down in history. We'll discuss after the break.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Bill Rammell alongside me. I mean, so much, I'll just put it as it is, anger. There's so much anger and frustration and concern among so many people at the moment about the general direction of travel in this country. Lots of you asking what else is being covered up by this government, and I believe that is $1 million question, unfortunately. I suspect we just will not know the answer to that question anytime soon. But look, before the break, I asked you a question. Do you know the name Sandy Peggy? I promise you that name will go down in history. She is a nurse that's been one for 30-odd years, unblemished record. She, for personal reasons, felt the need to go into the changing room at work and change her outfit. When she went to said changing room at work, she was met with a man in the changing room, a man that apparently identifies as a trans woman, so a trans-identified man. Long story short, there was then a misconduct case brought against Sandy Peggy for the hate crime, if you would like, of misgendering someone and basically being a transphobe bigot, if I was to put it so bluntly. Dragged on 18 months, this has all gone on. She's now been cleared of gross misconduct allegations. All of this has cost NHS Fife about £200,000 plus. Absolutely disgraceful. This does still carry on, though, because there isn't another additional tribunal to follow. But Jacqueline Foster, your thoughts?
Well, it's been absolutely appalling, and we've met Sandy and some nurses as well who are caught up in this sort of thing. And what is absolutely clear is, despite the Supreme Court ruling, which actually clarified all of this, we've got public bodies, including the NHS, who seem to think it doesn't really apply to them. Now, we've got, obviously, in Sandy's case, it's ended up in court. And what you need to know is that in Scotland, where this has all been very prevalent, this is NHS Fife in Scotland, where this one kicked off. And when they were looking in the Scottish Parliament at doing legislation in terms of trans issues, there were apparently about 15 or 16 very vocal trans activist groups who were there pushing and pressing. And this is where a lot of the politicians there really, went, I think, down the wrong slippery slope. Of course, Sandy here has been one of the... she's been a victim of all of this. And the fact that they just didn't hold their hands up, it was actually a doctor who was identifying as a woman, and it was the nurses' changing room. It was their changing room, as well as the female doctors, where they have to change. And they, ended up, she ended up put in this situation. The sooner they apologise, the sooner they make reparations to her, and the sooner they sort themselves out, the better.
India Willoughby, a well-known trans person, has come out and said trans people have no chance in the UK. It's totally hostile. If you bully or insult us, we will be the ones who lose our jobs or be portrayed as the aggressor. You, the bully, will be portrayed by government and media as the poor, unfortunate victim. Sick and twisted, he says. Bill Rammell, your thoughts?
Well, I don't agree with that at all. And look, sadly, too many organisations, public and private, have been captured in the last few years by extreme trans activists. And sadly, I think parts of the NHS fall into that category. She never should have been disciplined for sharing a changing... for criticising being forced to share a changing room with someone who was a biological male. And I wholly welcome the fact that she's been exonerated, but to be done for gross misconduct. Gross misconduct is for things like theft, it's for things like physical violence. Even if there was a case for her to answer, I really don't understand how it was gross misconduct. So I wholly welcome the fact that she's been cleared. But I think all sorts of organisations, the Supreme Court ruling is clear. They need to own that. They need to implement the recommendations. But, and this is the challenge, if you then believe in fairness and equality, all sorts of organisations have then got to make provision in terms of, changing rooms, in terms of toilets for trans people.
Or just have a third space.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying. But you're going to have to work that through.
But Bill Rammell, what you've got to understand is this won't be enough for a lot of these men. These men won't want to go into these third spaces. These men want to be validated as women. That's what they want. So if you then create this third space, which is a legal solution to this, I promise you, as sure as night follows day, it will not be enough. I've got to tell you...
But we live in a country that's governed by the rule of law, and the Supreme Court has ruled on this, and they do not have a reasonable expectation that they should be able to use women's spaces.
Well, look, time will tell the outcome of all of this. I've got to tell you, though, I don't know if it's just me, I'm getting a little bit sick and tired, quite frankly, of all of these minority activist groups, all of these minority rights issues, all the rest of it, being parachuted over and above the majority of this country. I say to Sandy Peggy, thank you for progressing the situation. I personally salute you. Thanks to my panel. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for your company, and I'll see you tomorrow. Night.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, very good evening to you. This is your Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, as we go through the rest of today, overnight and into tomorrow, we're going to see some wet weather pushing across western parts, and here there is the risk of some thunder. We've already had quite a bit of cloud and rain across the southwest today. That's because of a weather system that's pushing its way in, and it's going to continue to make its way northeastwards as we go through the next 24 hours. As a result, some hefty rain pushing across parts of Wales overnight, and some outbreaks of heavy, possibly thundery rain feeding in across Northern Ireland too. Further east, it's dry with clear skies, a few fog patches possible for some eastern parts of England, but for all, it is going to be a relatively warm night. Pretty warm indeed, actually, across the west. Most places seeing temperatures staying well in double figures. As we go through tomorrow morning then, a west-east split across many parts of England and Wales. Brighter, sunnier towards the east, more cloud, some wet weather towards the west. Across Northern Ireland, a fairly cloudy start, and there could be some heavy bursts of rain around. Similar across the southwest of Scotland, but elsewhere across much of Scotland, it's a fine, sunny morning, albeit there will be a bit of low cloud affecting parts of Orkney and Shetland. Then, as we go through the day, the cloud and outbreaks of rain feed a little bit further eastwards, but nonetheless, some eastern parts staying dry through much of the day and just turning a bit cloudier as we go into the afternoon. The heaviest rain will be towards the western parts of Northern Ireland. Risk of some intense thunderstorms here. Temperatures for all likely to be a degree or so higher than today, which means we could be looking at highs of around 28 or 29 Celsius in the southeast. Then looking ahead